Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
So yes, I think that you're a damaged person if you have your foreskin partially or fully amputated, and that you should try and get back to having the full range and depth of male sexuality. I don't think that's anything crazy to say.
Welcome back, intactivists, to Carter's Part 2 interview on Prevail over the System. If you missed Part 1, that was last week, so make sure you go ahead and check that one out before you go to this one. All right, now continuing the interview. Going back to the circumcision videos that are online, would you want them offline or would you want them to stay online?
I mean, I think in an ideal world, no one would have to watch them again, but I think their utility is simply too valuable to take off the internet. So yeah, I think they should remain up.
Okay, because there's quite a heated debate a little bit, because some people, they argue, okay, well, circumcision videos, they're CSAM, right? Because they're underage, all that stuff. But like you said, there is utility to it and it is happening. And how else are you going to warn people not to do it unless they can see what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, and also I'm making the argument this isn't just kind of bad. This is horrific genital mutilation, and like we have to go around the world and end it. So how we put that passion in people, I'll tell you what it was for me. It was watching these videos. I'm like, we're going to go across the entire world. This is our objective. This is our mission. This is our duty. It's not just the United States. This is a global objective to eradicate genital mutilation around the world. So I think these videos could play a significant role in that for the people that are willing to make that sacrifice. And I think there's an argument to be made for having to make our entire people make that sacrifice, whether it's extremely graphic videos being shown to children. I'm not sure about that. But, one example I could say is there was like assemblies at my school and projects around the Holocaust growing up, and there were extremely graphic shit that I saw related to that to try and sensitize us to the Holocaust. So, we're returning the favor, I think.
Okay. Yeah, it's just interesting because I've even seen like the Your Whole Baby website, I believe. They've had videos of circumcisions that were taken offline. And I almost feel like a lot of intactivists instinctively, they see a circumcision video and they get so angry about it that they just start reporting it. And it's like, I don't know. I don't know what your stance is on that, because people also use it for like fetishes and stuff like that as well. And I don't know if the ends justify the means. And I'm kind of curious on your opinion on that.
Yeah. I mean, for me, the bottom line is that I think that they have very, very, very significant utility and that they should remain up at all costs.
Okay. So yeah. Pro Circ Moms 2 was taken off recently. If it was up to you, would you leave that up or would you take that down?
I mean, that's separate than just having video evidence and photographic evidence. That is like an explicit fetish site.
Well, it's on Reddit. It was on Reddit.
I know. I'm sorry. Explicit subreddit around fetishizing this topic. So I think it is a little bit different, but in some ways I see the overlap. Like that could be left up to show people, hey, there's all these perverted people that think this way.
Yeah, and many of those could have been doctors. Like, hey, like this could be a doctor that wants your son to be mutilated so he can get off to it, right? I mean, potentially, I don't know, but it was very interesting, like the emotional response to it, because I reported it on the news and everything. I don't know if you saw it, but yeah, I got like, what was it, like 300 something to report the site, and I was just wondering what your take is, because it's almost like in the new, I don't want to say new world order that hopefully, like for your case, like comes into play, that would be used as evidence, like, hey, look at these people. There's groups of people out here that think like this, and they're literally targeting your, infants. And that could turn a lot of people off. Like, oh, well, I'm not going to do it now, versus taking it down. Well, like what benefits does intactivists have when they take it down, do you think?
Yeah. And I'm definitely of the same mind on this one. And, for me, it's not just about ending infant circumcision. It's about targeting specific groups and dramatically changing their authority and influence on our society. So from that sense, I want to weaponize these against identities and groups and individuals. So from that sense, I think that I'll always be in favor of retaining them or being able to, have them available to use.
Okay. So, Carter, is there anything else you'd like to say? Because we got a lot of fan questions, so we could call them that. Yeah, is there anything else you'd like to say before we?
No, I think that about covers the intro there.
Heck yeah. So, first question. Hey guys, it's me, Pods. I'm briefly interrupting this interview to let you know about the Pods e-commerce program. It is vital to keeping the Prevail Over the System channel alive. Go and join us on our Discord to learn more. And best of all, it's free to partake in the Pods e-commerce program, and we don't need any of your information whatsoever. This helps us keep the interviews coming along with other intactivist content to empower, teach, and update intactivists with very important information, as well as being the voice for the intactivist public. Thank you all so much. Okay, now back to the interview.
Let's go.
Well, let's start with the easy questions first. Let's get you into this. How can the groupers?
Yeah.
Okay. How can they help intactivism?
Who asked that question?
Rotor. Viking.
Yeah, very interesting question. So for those in the audience that are not aware of the Groypers, how I understand that group is they are followers of Nicholas Fuentes, who is a Catholic streamer, and he's affiliated, really right-wing oriented, and is very passionate about bringing out a Catholic monarchy within the United States of some kind. So that's what him and his group are pursuing. And why I think the Groypers, well, this is, yeah, well, it's really getting into strategy. I think the Groypers can be utilized, but it's not like I'm a Groyper myself or anything like that. But Nick himself is sympathetic to this issue. And I personally watch Nick pretty regularly. I'm not the biggest fan of Nick Fuentes on a lot of subjects that he brings up, or I don't align with him on a lot of things. But one subject that I'm very interested on that he talks about is related to Israel's influence on the United States. And so that's why I watch him personally, is because I want to be kept up to speed on and kept up to date on all of the developments that are happening in that space. But because I've been watching it for so long, or his show for so long, about a year now, I've seen the topic of circumcision come up multiple times on his live streams. And I've also seen in his chat how his followers will talk about this subject. And they're definitely very, very red-pilled on this subject matter, it seems like, more than other audiences are. So that's really the only reason I bring it up. And then they will, what they'll do, though, it's very obvious to see how the Groypers will use this topic. And they're obviously, at least partially, if this became a big topic in their space, they would use it to weaponize against organized Jewry and Israel. They would weaponize it against that faction. First of all, I'm in their networks right now. And it's something that I think about. I'm like, are we ready to pit these factions against each other? Now, I feel like that group is literally a powder keg on this topic in particular. It's a powder keg ready to explode. And the Groypers are, this very radicalized group of young militant men, and think they could do some damage with this, while wielding this subject as a sword and a shield. So.
Okay. So, strategy question. If intactivism did welcome the Groypers, because it does seem like, the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
I don't know about welcoming them. It would be more like this side. It wouldn't be, there would no way they would be able to be integrated together. But you can have, you know, multiple movements, factions addressing something at the same time.
Okay. So like a collab type thing.
I don't even think they would collaborate together in many, like the typical intactivists and the typical Groyper would ever, there would be much overlap there. But I still think that the Groypers could have some utility for, from the perspective, I mean, of this grand scale type of social engineering. I think, you know, the Groypers can play a role in this whole process. But I think there's a lot of hesitancy inside intactivism of even like discussing the Groypers. I mean, they're seen as anti-Semitic fools who need to be kicked out of the United States by a majority of the American public. So
Okay,
I
because
don't think they're going to want to be associated with them.
Okay, because I'm going to ask you, like, if you could have the choice, would you swap out Brahim for the Groypers if you had the choice? Because you know Brahim would instantly leave the intactivist movement if the Groypers like came in. Because how big are they? Like, how many members do they have?
It's hard to say. It's hard to say. They seem to be kind of a sleeper cell that's rapidly gaining more and more members, but kind of still under the radar.
Okay, well, I mean,
I
that's
would
kind
have
of
no
what
idea. I
Brahim
would
is
say
too,
at
if you
least
think
hundreds
about
of
it.
thousands, though.
Hundreds of thousands? Okay, that's way more
Yeah.
than Brahim. I think, do you know anything about Brahim and how many members they
Yeah.
have? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably you know, formal members, it's less than 20, probably.
Okay.
It's less than 10. Yeah, probably. I don't know how many people they have on their board and things, but yeah, I don't think the Groypers, for the most part, will ever be like intactivists or would have that label. Like they're on their own mission to straight up establish like a Catholic monarchy inside the United States. So I am not sure how motivated they will be for all of our goals. But what I will tell you, what they'll be very interested in is weaponizing this topic against Jews. That's definitely what they'll be interested in. But that's not really like my objective, my only objective, at least. So it's I don't align with the Groypers really entirely on everything. Definitely on quite a bit. I don't align with them. So utilizing them and seeing how they could be brought into the fold here and things like that, it's very murky for me. But I do feel like they are a very interesting spawning ground for this topic. And I brought it up in there, and it gets a lot of attention, and it gets a lot of eyes on this subject, and they're very, very interested in going deeper and deeper down it and understanding it better. So I've had nothing but really a positive or response from the Groypers in terms of learning more. Like, it's not the typical response I get in other groups. It's immediate interest in going deeper into it, pretty much universally within the Groypers.
Interesting. So these are going to be a bit less favorable questions.
Mm-hmm.
Just putting that out there. So first question from this person who asked, why does Carter openly defend known trolls who engage in bad faith and have contributed no verifiable impact to the movement?
Yeah.
That's not
I mean, I don't know who we're talking about in this case in terms of who these trolls might be, so I'm going to have a tough time addressing that question. So I'm going to pass on that one.
All right. What exactly has Carter done in the past 30 days, 1 year, and 2 years?
So from the perspective of 2 years, in terms of strictly intactivism, I've had conversations with 4 individuals or in some cases a set of parents that resulted in them deciding not to cut their child. So there are those wins. And then, you know, I've talked about this subject a lot on social media, and I've had interviews with POTS, and I've had interviews with other people, and I have discussed this topic in my personal life. And so that I've done that type of activism, just general outreach, awareness, activism. And then I've tried producing some assets, some graphical assets that other intactivists can use that I've seen used from time to time. And I think that would be about the extent of the formal activism that I've done.
Okay, awesome. So I'm gonna read these questions real quick. I feel like you answered some of these already. Like, what are you working on now? You've already talked about that, I would say. Would you agree on that?
Yeah.
Okay. What will you be working on in the next month? You've kind of talked about that for sure. And then, how many victims of MGM have you helped obtain justice or healing? Do you ever help people obtain justice? I don't think that's what you do.
I mean, I wish I could, but no. Yeah. Never have helped anyone achieve any sort of real meaningful justice. And what was the other part of the question?
Or healing.
I'm not sure if I've helped people heal very much either. If anything, I think I've traumatized them further.
Okay, well, good news. You can help people heal right now because the other person's question is ask him if he has advice on restoring.
Yeah. So on the topic of restoring, I think there's a lot of context that can be shared here and a lot of different directions to go. And my understanding has an opinion has evolved over time. And where I'm at right now is that for a significant portion of men that have been genitally mutilated or circumcised, whatever we want to use to define that, that if you're cut to a certain level, I would say personally, like a C3 or below, it's a very, and I think at any level, it's damaging personally. I think that at even a centimeter of tissue being amputated is way, way too far for me. Totally out of the question for me, a centimeter of tissue being amputated. But when you're cut to a C3 or below, there's just a very obvious mechanical or movement deficiency that you have, or in terms of the skin system, the foreskin being able to move up and down the glands. So it really just presents as a sexual disability, to be honest. And I think we just need to be more honest about this as intactivists. Like, not being able to move the foreskin totally up and down the glands does seem to present as a radical reimagining of male sexuality. So, and once you really understand better the anatomy of the foreskin, that becomes more and more and more clear. But why I bring all that up is because, do I think that people who are sexually disabled should try and regain functionality of their sexual organ? The answer is absolutely, obviously yes. I think that, like, if you were to go to a physician and have this damage on your body, they would start directing you down to foreskin restoration. They would present this as like a clinical option for you, or not even as this is the route we're going down. You would have to say something if you didn't want to go down this direction, and really recognizing that this is a disruption of normal male sexual anatomy, and that there's functional changes that happen that we should kind of codify and understand as loss and sexual dysfunction. So the question is, what are my thoughts on restoring? Do I think people should be restoring? Yeah, I absolutely do. I think that, especially if you're cut below a C3, you have a type of, and I think really at any level, you could call it a type of sexual dysfunction or sexual loss of some kind. But at a CI3 or below, it's a pretty dramatic reimagining of your sexuality. And so I think people that are in that position should absolutely be restoring personally. If you're above a C3, I still think I would still be restoring personally if I was in your position, but I think it's less of this dramatic sexual disability for some people that are at that stage. There's all sorts of other questions, though, where it's like, how much of your inner skin is left remaining? How much of your frenulum was amputated? All of these things kind of modify how much damage was done to you. But I think that for a lot of men out there right now that are in this very comparable, they're like, should I be restoring? Should I not be restoring? And they have, there's these men, they have no movement on their penis at all. And I was one of those men. Zero movement. Sex isn't enjoyable really for them, except this one little burst at the very end. They have no move. They think this is the extent of male sexuality is moving this. There's like no move. It's like a chicken wing. You're like, there's no movement of the foreskin going up and down the glands in the shaft. And they don't even recognize that that is like male. That's like what drives male sexuality is the movement, is the skin system moving up and down the glands and itself is such an important part of the male sexual response and getting the full extent of the feeling and stimulating our brain in the full depth that it should be stimulated at, or stimulating our sexual response in the proper way. And that becomes more and more clear to me the more that I restore. I'm like, especially when I was at a true C0, like I was sexually muted in an extremely radical way. So yes, I think that, really most men who are cut probably, in my perspective, should be restoring. And then especially the men that I think are like sexually compromised that are at a CI3 or below. Like if I was in control of clinical medicine, I would evolve things in a way that in urology or in, whenever men are having sorts of issues with their penis or their body, if a physician were to notice, hey, you have this loss of anatomy, of this normal penile anatomy that plays, this important role in facilitating proper sexual response and the full depth of sexual feeling, I would say, hey, let's, we want to repair this part of your body. This is dysfunction. This is damage. We're going to repair it. So maybe that even answers the question is, I want to change clinical medicine so we recognize this as damage that should be repaired. So what I see it as is you're a damaged person who ideally we could repair you back to a fully functional state. So yes, I think that you're a damaged person if you have your foreskin partially or fully amputated, and that you should try and get back to having the full range and depth of male sexuality. I don't think that's anything crazy to say.
Okay, so for the device for restoring, do you have like a preference or the best one starting out with for the audience?
Yeah, I don't want to suggest any specific advice right now. And it's because I haven't had great success with the devices because I was cut so tightly, which makes it challenging to use the devices. So I will probably have a recommendation like in a year from now where when I'm really starting to explore the devices more. But right now, what I'm using is the T-tape method, and that's been working well enough for me. Although I would say my progress is very, very slow, and it's not going very quickly for me, but I am making progress.
Okay, so from a CI0, how many years did it take you to get to a CI, what you're at now?
Yeah, so unfortunately, I would say it's taken me 2 years to get from a CI0 to a CI2, but then I stopped restoring for a little bit. And I've shared this a few times, but for some reason, my inner skin that I have left remaining is more sensitive, it seems like, than the average person's. And the mitosis, when I target the inner skin, which I'm trying to specifically grow, it has a tendency to have serious irritation. And it's not from the tape. It's took me a long time to figure it out. It's from the stretching of the tissue. And my remaining inner skin always kind of felt weird and looked kind of weird. It looked kind of like glassy burn tissue a little bit sometimes. And I could tell there were certain areas of the inner skin. I was like, this really feels like a burn wound. But anyway, I think that's causing issues with my restoration. But I had to stop restoring for a little bit. And I felt like I went back to a CI1. So I felt like I was at a CI2, and I've read about this. There are times where you will regress if and they actually recommend to go above and beyond how much you really want to restore. Like, let's say you were targeting a CI7, you should maybe restore to a CIA because you could experience some regression. And I definitely experienced that, and it was significant. I was like, wow, I really regressed. But I don't think that was permanent growth that had occurred, or it was, I just, it wasn't, it would have regressed regardless if I stopped stretching. But now I'm restoring again, and maybe a CI 1.5 is where I'm at right now.
Okay. I appreciate you sharing that with me and our audience. That's super awesome.
So I see myself as having a type of sexual disability.
Okay, that was Carter Steinhoff Part 2. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I'll put his links down in the description below so you can go and follow him. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss Part 3 of our interview with Carter Steinoff, where he's going to answer all the rest of the fan questions. And also so you don't miss our other Intactivist content we release every single week. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening. Please share this video to get this out to more people. Bye.